My granddaughter Emma lowered her voice to a whisper and shattered my world. "Grandma, I heard Mommy and Daddy talking. They're sending you to a nursing home today and taking your money." I smiled and stroked her 8-year-old head while the anger in my chest ignited like a wildfire. Brian and Jessica had no idea what they had just awakened. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let's go back and I'll tell you how I ended up babysitting two of the most ungrateful people on God's green earth. 18 months ago, my husband Frank died suddenly of a heart attack. Brian and Jessica swooped in like vultures, all concern and fake tears. "Mom, you can't live alone," Brian insisted. "Move in with us. We'll take care of you." What they really meant was come be our live-in nanny and ATM. But Emma's revelation changed everything. While she colored at the kitchen table, I quietly called my lawyer, David Morrison. He and I went to the same high school, and he handled Frank's will. "David, it's Margaret Sullivan. I urgently need to schedule a meeting today. Can we meet at 2? Is everything all right, Maggie? Let's just say some chickens are coming home to roost soon." Next, I called my bank. "This is Margaret Sullivan, account number 47789. I need to speak to someone about an immediate transfer of funds." The representative confirmed what I already knew. Thanks to Frank's life insurance and our savings, I had more money than Brian and Jessica thought. A lot more. I hung up and looked at Emma, still innocently coloring. The poor sweet child had no idea she'd just saved her grandmother from being robbed. I ruffled her hair. "Emma, sweetie, how would you like to help Grandma with a very special project?" She looked up at me with her bright blue eyes. "What kind of project?" "One that teaches people not to count their chickens before they hatch." At precisely 1:30 p.m., I told Emma we were going for a walk. I grabbed my purse, the one that held all my important documents, which I had started carrying everywhere after Frank's death. Call it widow's intuition, but I had a feeling this day might come. We walked to the coffee shop on the corner, where David was waiting. He looked concerned as I explained the situation. "They think I'm a helpless old woman to be simply discarded," I said. "They're about to find out they're wrong." David nodded grimly. "What do you want to do?" "Everything. A new will, revocation of power of attorney, account transfers, the works. And David, I want it all done before they get back from their trip." As we walked to his office, Emma skipped beside me, humming. She had no idea she was about to witness the most spectacular takedown in the history of the Sullivan family. Sitting in David's office while Emma played with toys in the waiting room, I reflected on how blind I had been. All the signs were there from the beginning, but grief makes you stupid. After Frank's funeral, when Brian suggested I sell my house and move in with them, I thought it was love. "The market's hot right now, Mom. You could get top dollar and we'd love to have you around." Only he didn't say my pension would help with their mortgage and free childcare would save them $800 a month. I sold my beautiful 3-bedroom home, which Frank and I had shared for 32 years, and signed over the proceeds to help them pay down their debts. $600,000 gone. "I should have noticed it then," I told David as he prepared the documents. How Jessica's eyes lit up when she heard the sale price. The sudden friendliness after years of barely tolerating me. The last 18 months had been a masterclass in manipulation. Every time I mentioned getting my own apartment, Brian would guilt-trip me. "Mom, Emma needs you. You're so good with her. Plus, at your age, don't you want to be with family?" At my age, I was 67, not 97. I could drive, cook, think, and, apparently, plot revenge better than they could plot their pathetic scheme. Jessica was more subtle, but just as calculating. "Oh, Margaret, your experience with children is invaluable. Emma is doing so well in school. It's certainly thanks to your help with her homework." Translation: keep doing unpaid labor while we go out 3 nights a week. The worst was how they isolated me from my friends. "You're so busy with Emma, we thought you might not want to join the book club. The ladies from church called, but we told them you weren't feeling up for visitors." Slowly, systematically, they cut me off from my support system. But they made one crucial mistake. They underestimated me.
David laid the papers on the table. This revokes their power of attorney and makes me your designated agent. This transfers your accounts to a new bank they don't know about. And this, he smiled, is your new will. I signed with a flourish. What about the money I gave them for the house? Now this gets interesting. Since there's no formal loan agreement, we can argue it was a gift contingent on you living there permanently. If they breach that contract, they owe it back, every penny, plus interest. I glanced at my watch. 2:45 p.m. They'd be home at 4 p.m., expecting to find their subservient old mother, ready for shipment to Shady Oaks nursing home. Instead, they'd find a woman who had just reclaimed her power. Emma burst into the office. "Grandma, are we done with the boring grown-up stuff?" "Almost, sweetie. Just one more stop." Our final stop was at First National Bank, where I had banked for 40 years. Emma sat in the kids' area with a lollipop while I met with Janet, the branch manager. "Mrs. Sullivan, I must say this is highly unusual. You want to transfer everything today? Everything?" "All of it. Checking account, savings account, certificates of deposit, all of it, to a new account at Commerce Bank across town." Janet's fingers flew across the keyboard. This is quite a substantial amount. Are you sure about this?" I thought of Brian's face this morning, how he avoided eye contact when he said they were running errands, how Jessica hugged me tightly as if saying goodbye, how they asked me to stay with Emma instead of going with them, breaking their usual pattern. I had never been so sure of anything in my life. The transfer took an hour. $637,412. Frank's life insurance payout, our retirement savings, the money from the house sale, and every penny I had saved in 40 years of careful living. Money they assumed they would get once they had me declared incompetent and gain control. "Mrs. Sullivan," Janet said cautiously, "if you don't mind me asking, why such a sudden urgency?" I smiled sweetly. "Let's just say some people are about to learn not to count their chickens before they hatch." By 3:30 p.m., Emma and I were back home. I sent her to her room to play and set about making their favorite dinner, beef cot roast with mashed potatoes. If this was to be my last dinner in this house, I wanted it to be memorable. As I peeled potatoes, I thought of the conversation they probably had this morning, the 5 p.m. appointment at Shady Oaks. Brian probably said, "We'll tell her after dinner. By tomorrow, she'll be settled in her new home and we'll start filing for power of attorney." They were probably already planning how to spend my money. Jessica had been eyeing a new SUV for ages. Brian had mentioned wanting to renovate the kitchen. They even discussed a trip to Europe, which they could finally afford. At 3:45 p.m., I heard their car pull into the driveway. I smoothed my apron and checked my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked like a harmless old woman cooking dinner for her loving family. Perfect. The door opened and I heard their voices, unusually cheerful and loud. They were overplaying it, probably feeling guilty about what they were planning. "Mom, we're home," Brian called. "Something smells amazing." "Just making your favorite. Emma's in her room. How were your errands?" A pause. "Fine," Jessica replied. "Just, around town." I smiled to myself. In an hour, they would learn that while they were around town planning my downfall, I had been running circles around them. Dinner was a masterclass in passive-aggressive theater. I served their plates with extra care, asked about their day with genuine interest, and complimented Jessica's new haircut. They squirmed like children caught stealing cookies, exchanging nervous glances when they thought I wasn't looking. "This roast is amazing, Mom," Brian said, though I noticed he barely ate. "You've really outdone yourself." "Well, I wanted to make this evening special," I smiled warmly. "You never know when things might change." Jessica nearly choked on her mashed potatoes. "Change? What do you mean?" "Oh, just life in general, dear. Nothing stays the same forever, does it?" They somehow managed to finish dinner, though the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Emma, bless her heart, chattered about school, completely oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around the table. At 7 p.m., Brian cleared his throat. "Mom, can we talk to you in the living room? Emma, go play in your room for a bit. This was it, I thought, the moment they had been preparing for all day. We settled into the living room, they on the couch, I in my favorite armchair by the window. Brian fidgeted with his hands, Jessica stared at the coffee table. Finally, Brian spoke. Mom, Jessica and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to consider other living arrangements. I tilted my head, an image of innocent bewilderment. Other arrangements? You mean like getting my own apartment? Not exactly, Jessica interjected, her voice artificially sweet. We were thinking more of a senior living community where there are people your age, activities, on-site medical staff. You mean a nursing home? It's not a nursing home, Brian said quickly. It's a beautiful community. We visited it today. Shady Oaks. They have a wonderful facility, great programs, and you've already made arrangements, haven't you? A flicker of glances. We thought we'd explore options, Brian said weakly. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. They expected tears, protests, perhaps even begging. Instead, I smiled. Well, this is interesting. What do you mean? Jessica's voice was sharp with worry. I spent the day exploring options too. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to David's contact. David, it's Margaret. Can you come over now? Yes, I think it's time. Brian's face paled. Mom, what are you doing? Taking care of business, dear. Just like you taught me. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. David Morrison will be here in 10 minutes to explain some changes I made today. You might want to sit down. Emma grabbed Brian's arm. What is she talking about?
The doorbell rang exactly 10 minutes later. I opened it to see David, briefcase in hand and a grim expression. Good evening, Margaret. Brian. Jessica. David, I said cheerfully. Why don't you explain to my son and daughter-in-law what we accomplished today? David settled into the armchair opposite Brian and Jessica, who looked like they were facing a firing squad. Emma, thankfully, was asleep upstairs, sparing her the atomic bomb I was about to drop. Where to begin? David asked, opening his briefcase. Power of attorney seems like a good place, I suggested sweetly. David nodded. Effective today, Brian and Jessica Sullivan no longer have any legal authority over Margaret Sullivan's affairs. The power of attorney they planned to use had been officially revoked. Brian shot to his feet. Use? We weren't planning anything. Sit down, son, I said quietly. We both know that's a lie. Jessica's face was as white as fresh snow. Margaret, I don't understand. Why are you doing this? Because 8-year-olds have better hearing than you think. I looked directly at her. Emma told me about your conversation this morning, about sending me to a home and taking my money. The silence that followed was deafening. Brian slowly sank back onto the couch. His face was a mask of panic. Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. David, I continued, would you mind explaining the financial arrangements? Certainly. Mrs. Sullivan has transferred all her assets to new accounts at a different bank. This includes approximately $637,000, which represents her life savings, insurance payouts, and the money she received from the sale of her home. You can't do this to us, Jessica finally found her voice. That's our money. Actually, David said calmly, I've researched the situation and there's no formal loan agreement. The money was given with the understanding that Margaret would reside here permanently. If that agreement is breached, she is entitled to demand repayment. I finished, with interest. Brian ran his hands through his hair. Mom, please, let's discuss this rationally. You don't understand what you're doing. Oh, but I do. I stood up, feeling more powerful than I had in months. I understand that you were planning to have me declared incompetent to control my finances. I understand that you isolated me from my friends and used me as free help.
And I understand that you were counting money that was never yours to begin with. We were trying to protect you." Brian's voice rose. "You're 67 years old. Living alone isn't safe." "I'm not living alone. I'm living with people who see me as a burden and an ATM. There's a difference." Jessica leaned forward desperately. "Margaret, we can work this out. Maybe we approached this wrong, but we truly care about you." I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "You care about my pension. You care about free childcare. You care about my money, but not about me." David cleared his throat. "There's one more matter we need to discuss." My smile turned predatory. "Ah, yes, the best part." David pulled out another folder. "Margaret has also updated her will. The previous version left all her estate to Brian with provisions for Emma's education. The new will makes significant changes." Brian's face went from pale to green. "What changes?" I decided to deliver this blow myself. "The ones where Emma gets everything. In a trust until she's 25. You and Jessica get nothing, not a single penny." Jessica made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a wail. "You can't do this to us. We have a mortgage, car payments, Emma's future to think about." "You should have thought about that before you decided to rob me. I was willing to play nice. Did you really think I was so foolish that I wouldn't unravel your scheme? Shady Oaks costs $4,000 a month. You had it all figured out, didn't you? Send me away, sell my things, take control of my money, and pocket the difference." Brian tried a last desperate plea. "Mom, I'm your son, your only child." "Your father," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "worked 2 jobs for 30 years so we could save every penny for our retirement. He went without so we could build something to leave for you, and you planned to steal it while I was still alive." I walked over to the fireplace where a picture of Frank stood and picked it up, looking at his kind face. "Do you know what your father would say if he could see you now? He'd say, 'I should have done this sooner.'" I put the picture down and turned back to face them. "David, you have one more document, don't you?" David nodded grimly. "An eviction notice. Margaret has decided she no longer feels safe living here. As tenants without a lease, you have 30 days to find her alternative living arrangements." "Eviction?" Brian's voice cracked. "This is our home." "Actually," I said, pulling out my own folder, "this is where it gets interesting. Remember that $600,000 I gave you? I have all the bank records showing. The transfer came from my account to yours specifically to pay off your mortgage and credit cards. There are no loan documents, but there are emails where you promised I'd always have a home here." Jessica's face softened as she realized, "You want the money back." "Every penny. Plus 18 months of rent you should have been paying me. The money you saved on childcare, and compensation for emotional distress." I smiled sweetly. "I think that comes to about $700,000. "Total?" Brian's voice was barely audible. "We don't have that kind of money." "Then I suppose you'll have to get creative. Sell the house, liquidate your retirement accounts, get a second job, whatever it takes." I shrugged. "Or declare bankruptcy. Either way, you won't be doing it on my dime anymore." David stood up, snapping his briefcase shut. "I'll leave you kids to consider this information. Margaret, your new apartment is ready whenever you want to move in." As he walked out, Jessica called out desperately, "What about Emma? You can't just abandon your granddaughter." I paused at the foot of the stairs, my hand on the banister. "I'm not abandoning Emma. I'm teaching her a valuable lesson about what happens when you try to con the people who love you. She'll understand someday." I walked upstairs to pack my things, leaving Brian and Jessica to contemplate the smoking ruins of their perfect plan.
The next day, I began my new life. That evening, I slept better than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear Jessica starting to cry. 3 weeks later, I sat in my beautiful new apartment overlooking Riverside Park, watching runners and dog walkers enjoy the morning sun. The 2-bedroom furnished rental cost me $1,800 a month, a fraction of what I had contributed to Brian and Jessica's household expenses. My phone rang. Brian's name flashed on the screen for the 14th time this week. I let it go to voicemail, just like the other 13.
When it stopped ringing, I played his latest message. "Nom, please call me back. We need to talk. This has gone too far. Emma's asking where you went and Jessica's having panic attacks. We can work this out if you'll just be reasonable." Reasonable? That was rich coming from someone who planned to have me declared incompetent. I deleted the message and called David instead. "How's our lawsuit going?" "Slowly. They've hired Barton Bark from Bark & Associates. He's quite good, actually." David's voice was cautious. "He's arguing that the money you gave us was a gift, not a loan, and that you can't retrospectively demand it back." "And what did you tell him?" "That we have 18 months of documented evidence showing they treated you like a tenant, not a family member. Bank records, emails, even grocery checks where you paid for household expenses. The pattern of financial abuse is clear." I smiled, settling into my comfortable chair. "What else?" "Bark filed a motion arguing that you're not in a mental state to make such financial decisions. They want a psychological evaluation." That wiped the smile off my face. They're still trying to declare me incompetent? It's a last-ditch effort. They know they're losing, so they're throwing everything they have at the wall to see if something sticks. David paused. "Maggie, there's something else. They've been asking questions about Frank's insurance life, specifically if you knew about all the beneficiaries." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean, all the beneficiaries?" "I'm not sure. Bark hinted that there might be some irregularities in how the insurance money was distributed. I'm looking into it." After I hung up, I sat looking out at the park, worry settling in my stomach like a cold stone. Frank always handled our insurance and investments. I trusted him completely, signing whatever papers he put in front of me without reading them carefully. What if Brian knew something I didn't?
That afternoon, I drove to Emma's school. I waited across the street in my car until I saw her walking towards the playground after classes ended. She looked smaller than I remembered, and sadder. I got out and called her name. Her face lit up like Christmas, and she ran to me, almost knocking me over with her hug. "Grandma, I missed you so much. Why did you leave?" My heart broke a little. "I had to, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and other grown-ups have to protect themselves. Will you come home?" "I can't, Emma, but maybe you could come to my place sometimes. My new apartment has a pool." Her eyes widened. "Really? Really? Ask your parents if you can come stay with me this weekend." I hugged her tightly. "I love you, baby girl. Don't you ever forget that." As I drove away, I saw Jessica's car pulling into the school parking lot. She probably saw me with Emma because my phone immediately started ringing. I didn't answer. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for Friday morning at Dr. Patricia Coleman's office. I arrived early, dressed in my best navy suit with pearl earrings, the picture of a competent, well-dressed older woman. Dr. Coleman was younger than I expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Sullivan, I want you to know that this evaluation was requested by your son's attorney, but I'm working independently. I'm here to assess your mental state, not to take sides." "I appreciate that, Dr. Coleman." For 2 hours, she put me through cognitive tests, memory exercises, and questions about my recent decisions. I answered everything truthfully, explaining my rationale for every financial move I had made. "You have a very sharp memory and strong analytical skills," she observed. "Can you tell me about your relationship with your son and daughter-in-law?" I chose my words carefully. "They are struggling financially, and I think they saw me as a solution to their problems, rather than as a person with my own needs and rights. Do you believe your recent actions might be considered extreme by some people?" I looked her squarely in the eye. "Dr. Coleman, if someone planned to steal your life savings and have you declared incompetent against your will, what would you consider an appropriate response?" She made a note. Point taken. That evening, David called with an update. "The evaluation went well. She's recommending against appointing a conservator. But Maggie, we have a problem. I had found what Bark had been hinting at." My stomach dropped.
Tell me. Frank had a second life insurance policy, a big one, $2 million, purchased 5 years earlier than he died. You weren't the only beneficiary. The room seemed to tilt. Who else? Someone named Linda Morrison. Does that ring a bell? The name hit me like a physical blow. Linda Morrison, Frank's secretary from the engineering firm where he worked for 15 years, the pretty blonde who was always a little too friendly at the company picnics. She got half the money, Maggie, $1 million. The insurance company cut 2 checks, one to you for $1 million, one to her for $1 million. I sat back in my chair, my brain working. But I only received $500,000 from Frank's insurance. That's what Bark was interested in. If Frank left Linda $1 million and you were supposed to get $1 million, where's your other $500,000? All the pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Brian had handled all the insurance paperwork after the funeral. He told me the policy was worth $500,000 after taxes and fees. I was so consumed by grief I believed him. My son stole $500,000 from me. It looks that way. And if he was sitting on that information while trying to declare me incompetent against my will, it shows a pattern of financial manipulation that has gone on for years. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of multiple betrayals. My husband had betrayed me emotionally and financially. My son had stolen from me before he even tried to declare me incompetent. The 2 people I trusted most both betrayed me. But instead of despair, I felt something else rising in my chest. Pure, crystalline rage. David, I said quietly, I want to destroy him.
I spent the weekend planning my next move. If Brian thought he could manipulate me with hidden information about Frank's affairs, he was about to learn that the game could be played 2 ways. Monday morning, I called Linda Morrison. According to the internet, she was now Linda Morrison Hayes, living in suburban Atlanta with her orthodontist husband and 2 teenage daughters. The phone rang 4 times before a woman answered. Hello, Linda. This is Margaret Sullivan, Frank's wife. The silence stretched for so long, I thought she had hung up. Finally, oh my God, Margaret, I didn't expect. How did you get this number? I kept my voice pleasant, conversational. I'm very resourceful when I need to be. I think we need to talk about Frank's insurance policy. I don't know what you're talking about, Linda. Sweetie, I know about the $2 million policy. I know you received half. What I want to know is what you know about my half. Another long pause. Your half? Brian said you received your share. Brian said? When exactly did you speak to my son? He called me after Frank died to tell me about the funeral and discuss the insurance situation. I felt my pulse quicken. What did he say about the insurance situation, Linda? Her voice was quiet, but I could hear the tremor in it. He said the policy was for $500,000 and that you received your share. He also said that you knew about my share and that it was Frank's condition that I receive my portion if anything happened to him. I closed my eyes, feeling the rage boil in my chest. Frank would never have made such a condition. He was always an honest man, and he loved me. That was a lie, Linda. Brian stole my money. He said the policy was for $500,000, but it was actually for $2 million. He gave you $1 million, and he stole my $1 million. I don't know what to say, Margaret. Linda sounded shaken. I didn't know. He said everything was above board and that you knew. I should have trusted him. Trusted him? He stole $500,000 from me, Linda. That's not just money. That's my retirement, my security, my life. I want my money back, and I think you can help me. How? Her voice was weak, almost hopeless. You can testify, Linda. You can tell the truth about what Brian told you. You can help me get back what's mine. I don't know. She hesitated. My life is here, my family. I can't afford to lose all of that. I understand, Linda, but you have to understand that Brian conned both of us. He used you just like he used me. If we don't stop him, he'll keep doing it to others. Please, Linda, think about it. I'm going to hang up, but I'll be waiting for your answer. Please don't make me wait too long. I hung up, feeling a mix of anger and hope. Linda was my key to destroying Brian, and I knew she had to make the right choice. For the next few days, I was on edge, waiting for Linda to call. I knew she had to be feeling guilty, realizing that Brian had deceived her just like he had deceived me. Finally, on Wednesday evening, my phone rang. It was Linda. "Margaret, I can't do it." Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "I understand, Linda, but why?" "Because I'm scared. I'm scared of losing everything. My husband, my daughters, my home. I can't afford to take that risk." "I understand, Linda, but you know Brian won't stop. He'll keep doing this to others until someone stops him." "I know, Margaret, but I just can't. I'm sorry." I hung up, feeling my hope crumble. Linda had been my last chance, and she refused to help. But I couldn't afford to give up. I had to find another way to destroy Brian. I called David to discuss the next step. "David, Linda won't help. What now?" There was silence on the other end of the line. Then he said, "Maggie, I think we have another option." "What is it?" "We can file a civil lawsuit, sue Brian for fraud and theft, but it's going to be long and expensive." "How long?" "Maybe a year or more." "And how much will it cost?" $50,000, maybe more." I hesitated. 50,000? That's almost everything I have left. "But it's your money, and you have the right to get it back." "We can do this, Maggie, but it's going to be a fight." "I know, David, but I'm ready. I'm ready for the fight." For the next few months, I was engrossed in a legal battle with Brian. David worked tirelessly, gathering evidence and preparing for court. We knew it would be difficult, but we were ready for the fight. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. I sat in the courtroom, feeling my heart pound in my chest. Brian and Jessica sat on the other side, looking nervous and tired. The judge entered and the trial began. David began by presenting the evidence, showing how Brian had manipulated the insurance policy and stolen my money. He also presented evidence of the financial manipulation Brian and Jessica had used against me. Brian and his lawyer tried to counter the evidence, but David was unyielding. He was a master of his craft, and he knew how to win this case. After several hours of testimony, the judge called a recess to consider the evidence. David and I sat in the hallway, waiting for the decision. I felt exhausted, but also determined. "David, I want to thank you for everything you've done. You've been with me from the beginning, and I don't know what I would have done without you." David smiled at me. "Maggie, it's been my pleasure. You deserve justice, and I'm glad I could help." Just then, the judge emerged from his chambers and called us back into the courtroom. We stood and walked in, feeling our hearts pound in our chests. The judge began to speak, and I held my breath. "After considering all the evidence, I have concluded that Brian Sullivan is guilty of fraud and theft against his mother, Margaret Sullivan. He is ordered to repay all stolen funds, plus interest and court costs." I felt tears well up in my eyes, and I hugged David. "We did it! We won!" Brian and Jessica looked stunned, and I knew they understood they had lost. But I also knew this was only the first step. I had to rebuild my life and move forward. Over the next few months, I worked on rebuilding my life. I found a new apartment that was bigger and more beautiful than my previous one. I also started volunteering at a local senior center, helping other women who were in similar situations. I knew my story could inspire others, and I wanted to use my experience to help. I also started meeting new people, making new friends, and building a new life. I knew it would be difficult, but I was ready for the fight, and I knew I could do it. After all, I was Margaret Sullivan, and I was stronger than anyone could have imagined.